This Film is Lit, the podcast where we finally settle the score on one simple question. Is the book really better than the movie? I'm Brian, and I have a film degree, so I watch the movie, but don't read the book.
And I'm Katie. I have an English degree, so I do things the right way and read the book before we watch the movie.
So prepare to be wowed by our expertise and charm as we dissect all of your favorite film adaptations and decide if the silver screen or the written word did it better. So turn it up, settle in, and get ready for spoilers, because this film is lit. Thought I'd gone to the limits. I hadn't. The Cenobites gave me an experience beyond limits. Pain and pleasure indivisible. It's Hellraiser, and this film is lit. Hello and welcome back to This Film is Lit, the podcast where we talk about movies that are based on books. It's our 2025 Halloween episode covering Hellraiser. We have so much to talk about. No Guess Who this week, but we do have every single other segment. Plenty to get into. We're going to start, as we always do, if you have not read or watched Hellraiser, with a brief summary of the film in Let Me Sum Up.
Let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
This synopsis is sourced from Wikipedia. In Morocco, Frank Cotton, a hedonist, buys a puzzle box said to open the door to a realm of otherworldly pleasure. At home in his bare attic, Frank solves the puzzle and hooked chains emerge, tearing him apart. Later, Frank's brother, Larry, moves into the same house. He intends to rebuild his relationship with his second wife, Julia. Larry is unaware that Julia had an affair with his brother Frank before her marriage to him. When Larry accidentally cuts his hand moving furniture, his blood drips on the attic floor and resurrects Frank in a ghoulish form. Julia later finds Frank. Still obsessed with him, she agrees to help restore his body so they can run away together. Julia picks up men in bars and brings them back to the attic where she mortally wounds them. Frank then drains their life, which regenerates his body. Frank explains to Julia that, having exhausted all sensory experiences, he sought out the puzzle box, which was supposed to provide access to a realm of new carnal pleasures. When the puzzle was solved, the Cenobites came to subject him to extreme sadomasochism. Kirsty, Larry's teenage daughter and Frank's niece, sees Julia bringing a man to the house and follows her to the attic where she finds Frank. She evades Frank and escapes with the puzzle box, collapsing shortly thereafter. Awakening in a hospital, Kirsty solves the box out of curiosity and unknowingly summons the Cenobites and a monster called the Engineer, from which she narrowly escapes. The Cenobites' leader explains that although they have been perceived as both angels and demons, they are simply explorers from another dimension seeking carnal experiences, and that they can no longer differentiate between pain and pleasure. When they attempt to force Kirsty to return to their realm, and then with them, she informs Pinhead that Frank has escaped them. The Cenobites agree to spare Kirsty and recapture Frank instead, with the condition that Frank must confess to escaping them. Kirsty returns home, where Frank has killed Larry and has taken on his identity by wearing his skin. Julia shows her what is purported to be Frank's flayed corpse in the attic. Julia then leaves the attic, locking the door behind her. The Cenobites appear and, not fooled by the deception, demand the man who did this. Kirsty tries to escape, but is held by Julia and Frank. Frank reveals his true identity to Kirsty, and when his sexual advances are rejected, he decides to kill her to complete his rejuvenation. He accidentally stabs Julia instead and drains her without remorse. Frank chases Kirsty to the attic, and when he is about to kill her, the Cenobites appear after hearing him confess to killing her father. Now certain he is the one they are looking for, they ensnare him with chains with hooks and tear him to pieces. When the Cenobites double-cross Kirsty and attempt to take her, she grabs the puzzle box from Julia's dead hands and banishes them by reversing the motions needed to open the box. Kirsty's boyfriend Steve arrives, and they both escape the collapsing house. Afterwards, Kirsty throws the puzzle box into a burning fire. A vagrant who has been stalking Kirsty walks into the fire and retrieves the box before transforming into a winged skeletal creature and flying away. The box ends up with the same merchant who sold it to Frank, where he offers it to another customer. That is a summary of the film. As I said, no Guess Who this week, but I got tons of questions. Let's get into them. Was that in the book?
Gaston, may I have my book, please?
How can you read this? There's no pictures.
Well, some people use their imagination.
So the film immediately opens up on Frank getting the box from a mysterious man I found out in the summary in Morocco. The film, I don't believe.
I don't think it
clarifies
ever
where you
actually
are.
says.
Not that it matters. Some bazaar somewhere, he is able to acquire this box, and then he opens it, and then he is immediately torn to pieces by hooks. But we don't really see much of what happened or what transpired there. He just kind of opens it and then is killed. Seemingly, there's a lot of there's a minimal amount of detail in that opening scene. But I wanted to know if the book opens similarly, and if we are similarly in the dark about who this guy is or why this happened or any of what's going on. It's very much a cold open that leaves you in the dark with lots of questions.
The book does open with Frank doing his ritual to open up the box and summon these Cenobites, although we're told a lot more than we are in the movie. The first part of the book is third person limited from Frank's perspective, so we know like all of his thoughts and stuff. So we know that he's trying to open a portal to another realm to summon something called the Order of the Gash, because he thinks he's exhausted every hedonistic experience that Earth has to offer. We also actually see the Cenobites arrive in the book.
Yeah.
They show up and they give Frank a warning that if he goes with them, he can't back out and there's no coming back. But he still wants to go with them, despite there being a lot of evidence that he should not.
This is a bad idea.
It's a bad idea.
Yeah.
And then there's a scene where they like completely overwhelm his senses and make him experience like everything at once. Then the female Cenobite reappears sitting naked on top of a pile of human heads with their cutout tongues lined up on her thighs.
Slay Queen.
It's
Good
a
for
great
her.
image. And says, "Let's begin," and then the chapter ends.
Okay.
I preferred the book's version overall. I think the mystery that the movie creates is interesting, but not as interesting as everything going on in the book.
I would agree. I think that I don't know if we needed all of the details of what's going on in the book, but a little bit more, I think would have helped that opening mystery be a little. Literally, you get nothing in the movie. You don't know who this guy. I don't even know if you know his name in that scene. We find it out later.
Yeah.
But like, because maybe you'd hear it. I can't remember. But you get so little information, and he opens the box, and then it's so truncated. You're like, oh, I guess he got hooked. I don't know. Like it just happens so quickly, and then you're like, all right.
Right. And then you get like some visuals, I guess, of like where they're torturing him, but it's hard to tell, like, are the bits and pieces supposed to be him?
Yes, that's what I literally was unsure if those bits and pieces were supposed to be him.
Or like somebody else.
Or a previous, victims or I just thought there was so little information in that opening scene that if it was a little closer to the book, I don't know if you need I don't need every single detail of like they're called the Order of the Gash, and he's all of the explicit details of like his motivations for why he's doing this and everything, or that he thinks it's going to lead to another realm. I don't need any of that information, but just a little bit more of like why he's trying to do this, a little bit of like, maybe we see him shooting up drugs and it's not doing what he, something leading, just a little bit more, I think would have been really helpful. And I'll have more about that later if I remember, but that was one of my biggest notes of the movie is that I felt like the first act needed a little additional time. We'll get to your notes later. It's kind of like your final verdict. I think there's like kind of a very easy fix to this movie that we'll talk about later, but we'll get there in a bit.
Okay.
And I say fix, so I'll say it right up top. I actually liked the movie quite a bit. I was I enjoyed it thoroughly and was very pleasantly, I don't even want to say surprised because I had heard it was good, but I was kind of pleasantly surprised that it was not at all what I was expecting.
Yeah.
And very interesting. And, the plot was vastly different than kind of what I don't even know what I was expecting, but it was not remotely what I thought it was going to be, which was fun.
Real quick, before you move on, I do want to talk about one other thing. I don't have this in my notes, but I just want to talk smack on Frank for a second because I don't like him.
Sure.
So in this opening part of the book, he talks about like thinks about what he thinks is going to happen after he like opens this portal to this other realm and the Order of the Gash arrives.
Mm-hmm.
And what he describes was very funny to me because it's like this whole buildup of like, oh, I've experienced every pleasure that Earth has to offer, and I need to go to another realm to experience different kinds of pleasures. And then what he describes wanting to happen when they get there is basically like an orgy.
So like
Like basic bitch shit. And then he's surprised when they show up and it's not basic bitch shit.
He
I'm
describes
like, what do you
things
think
that
was going to happen?
So your point is being that he describes things that he could in fact engage
He could
here
in fact have engaged on Earth like with normal people
Yes.
and not like gone to a hell realm
Yeah.
and been like ripped apart.
Yeah.
Like, man, I really spent the whole of this book being like, you are a dumb motherfucker.
Apparently he was unaware of S&M clothes.
I guess.
Or something. So then we move forward in the story. Does an unspecified amount of time later? There may be a title that says some amount of months later. I can't recall. But now Larry and his wife Julia are moving into the home that Frank was in earlier. It's like I think it's like their old family home potentially, and Frank was squatting there. Is what it seemed like.
Home.
Yeah, and he's like, well, we haven't heard from Frank in forever. I think he was, and they realize he was staying there. Blah blah blah, and we start kind of getting these reveals that Julia maybe has some sort of strange connection with Frank. Like she sees a photo of him and she like pockets it, and the way she's kind of reacting to everything is very strange for a woman that we assume would not know, maybe vaguely knows this guy is a family relation or whatever. But then it is very quickly revealed right here at the beginning that we get a flashback and we see that Julia, who is Kirsty's stepmother, who we'll meet shortly, and Larry's current wife, had an affair with Frank. And we see the scene where this happens. They have sex on top of her wedding dress in a very
very
on the nose,
in a very on the nose moment of symbolism.
Yes, and so it's clearly they had this affair, and she seemed to be into him because he was this very like dark, dangerous guy.
He's like bad boy.
He's a bad boy, yeah, and she was into that. And I wanted to know if we find out that quickly, because we're like less than 10 minutes into the movie, I think, at this point. Very, very, very quickly into the movie. I wanted to know if the book reveals that quickly that Julia, assuming the characters are the same, which I assume they are for people who don't remember or know or weren't here for the prequel. This book, The Hellbound Heart, was also written by Clive Barker. So I would assume there aren't huge changes for that he's mostly faithfully adapting his book, considering the whole reason for him directing.
We'll find out.
We'll get there. But part of the whole reason for him directing this was because he had not liked some of the previous adaptations of some of his works, his literature. So he wanted to do it himself. So anyways, are we revealed that early that Julia had an affair with Frank?
Yes, that is a pretty early reveal in the book as well. They had sex once, like a week before the wedding, and then Frank flies the coop, and Julia yearns.
She does indeed yearn.
She yearns.
She yearns hard, absolutely. So as they're moving in, kind of an important thing happens, which is that they're trying to carry a bed up the stairs. Larry and the movers are, and Larry accidentally cuts his hand on a nail on like the wall and then goes up to find Julia, who's up in the attic, because he has like a blood.
He doesn't like blood.
He doesn't like blood. It like makes him pass out, which I think they're playing with kind of a fun, setting up him as like kind of this polar opposite of Frank, whereas Frank is this bad boy who's like into very dark hedonistic shit. Larry, the sight of blood will make him pass out. So setting up that dichotomy. But he goes and finds her up there, and he starts and he's dripping blood all over the place, and he drips blood on the floorboards in this attic, which is where in the opening scene in the cold open Frank was killed. And then we see the blood seep down into the floorboards. Something weird is happening there, and then we get this reverse time lapse of they melted a corpse and then they unmelted it in reverse, basically. And it's a very cool effect of Frank forming out of the floorboards as this very gooey corpse. And I wanted to know if a corpse reverse gooified in the attic after Larry bled all over the floor. And is it Frank? I assume this is going to be Frank based on the location.
Yeah, I mean, one would assume.
Yeah.
So Larry, whose name in the book is Rory.
Okay.
I'm going to do my best to just refer to him as Larry.
Yeah. That must have been part of the Americanizing.
Perhaps so, yeah.
Not a lot of Rorys in the U.S.
No.
Quite a few Larrys.
But Larry bleeding onto the floor is the impetus that starts Frank's journey back to the earthly realm. But it happens differently in the book. So the first time that Julia sees Frank, she's standing in the room because she was inexplicably drawn in there. And the bricks on the wall start to like move and shift and like opens up a portal. And she's basically like looking into the Cenobites world where she can see Frank's grotesque bloody form like languishing in a cell.
Yes.
And he isn't actually able to come into the room until after the first murder. And I do kind of wish that the movie had done both because I would have liked to see the wall moving.
Yeah.
And I think that would have explained a little better of like what was going on.
I think it could have. I think it's possible that I would imagine the reason they didn't do that is a couple of things. One, practical like effect level of like doing that effect of showing the wall going away, and two, they knew they were going to do that later when Kirsty is in the hospital,
they
and so
do that later with her.
Maybe a little redundant to do it twice, so maybe they wanted to show this a different way, and I thought it was a very cool shot where the camera pedestals down through the floorboards, and you see the
you see like some
weird heart thing or something like start to beat under the floorboards,
very,
which I thought was
very
dumb.
Telltale Heart.
Yeah, which the title of the Hellbound Heart, I assumed there was a little bit of inspiration from Telltale Heart there with the way that all worked. Cool. So Frank comes back to life as a very gooey corpse.
Really, I'm like, if you've never seen this movie, cannot stress enough how gooey everything was.
Incredibly gooey. It's the scene from The Mummy. They're like, is he supposed to be so juicy? Yeah. But he comes back and he tells Julia, she finds him in the attic, freaks out, but then realizes, he starts talking and is like, hey, it's Frank. And she's like, oh, what? And he says that he needs her help, that he can reform, but he will need her help. He needs blood, basically.
Yes.
Because Larry's blood helped bring him back a little bit. He needs more blood. And so he's going to need her help to bring strangers here to murder and absorb the life force from. And boy, this is where I was like, I had absolutely no idea what the plot of this movie was. Because everything with Frank and her, Julia, I was like, gun to my head, never would have guessed this was the plot of this movie at all. And I thought it was very interesting, but I wanted to know if that's what happens in the book. Does Frank need Julia's help to regain his form?
Yes. In the book, the first time she sees him, like through the wall, he's only able to say, Julia, it's Frank. Blood. But she gets the idea and lures the guy back to murder him and provide said blood. She's like, well, I'd really like to bang him again. So if it's blood that we need, blood he shall have. Basically.
Fair enough.
I had a very similar experience reading the book, though. I thought that the Cenobites would be in way more of the story than they were.
Yeah, they're like barely in
They're
the
like
movie.
not really. They're in more of the movie than they are of the book, honestly.
Yeah, it is really interesting. I was not expecting that. I guess maybe I kind of knew that. I had maybe heard that the Cenobites aren't, at least in the first movie, are not like that, the main thing in the movie in the same way that like Michael Myers is in Halloween or whatever. Or I say that I've actually never seen Halloween, so maybe he's not in that much in the movie. Maybe there's this whole subplot. I actually don't know. But that the Cenobites are not really the same kind of pivotal like main characters that you would assume that they were.
Yeah.
And yeah, anyways, this whole plot with Frank and Julia and everything, I thought was fascinating because it was just not at all what I was expecting. So that was fun.
I kind of had like, after I had done a little bit of research and had like looked at some like screen caps from the movie and stuff, I thought it was going to be about actually getting him out of the Cenobites realm.
Like out of hell or
yeah,
whatever.
like going on this mission to get
like
him out
into
of hell.
Yeah, I bet some of the later sequels might be something like that.
Perhaps.
I don't know. Yeah,
but it wasn't really about that. It was about rebuilding his body with blood.
Yeah, it was very interesting. Well, speaking of, well, actually, before we get to that, we have this scene in the movie that I thought was really interesting. That is, I believe, a nightmare sequence for Kirsty, right? Or Kirsty. That she has this nightmare, and we get a shot of her in a room that I don't think is the attic. It's maybe another room in the house. I'm not sure. I'm not even sure if it matters. But we see her in this room, and we hear a crying baby. And then there's this something under a white sheet on like a bed. It's not a bed, but it seems like a plinth
slab,
or something.
Like a morgue slab
something
or something
like that in front of her under this white sheet. And there's a bunch of like feathers floating in the air in the room. And it's all kind of in slow motion. And then the sheet starts like getting soaked with blood. And it just kind of ends abruptly. And I don't think anything really comes of it. But I wanted to know if that came from the book. And it's almost a lost in adaptation of like, was that, because we never go back to that. We're never really sure what was going on there. And I was interested to get your input on it because it's a very cool looking scene, but I don't know if I know what it's doing in the movie.
Well, I'm gonna disappoint you, because none of this is from the book. And I'm honestly not sure how to interpret it beyond that was spooky.
Yeah. I was trying to think if it could be somehow related because I'm thinking through it now. Like the figure under the sheet, it's maybe something related to her mom, like her dead mom, maybe. And like the baby crying, maybe something in relation to like her, like maybe her mom died when she was a baby. I don't know. I was trying to think it must be related to that.
But the movie never brings up her mom.
Not really. No, not explicitly. I think she might get mentioned offhand like once. Well, or there's a joke about how Larry tells the movers like that Julia is not her mom.
Yeah.
But I don't think we ever really find anything out about her mom, what happened there. But I'm just trying to figure out what that possibly could be because it's a cool scene or it's a very cool visual scene. But yeah, who knows? If you know what the heck's going on there or if there is something, I assume there's something to get out of it, but I don't really know what it is.
My only other thought, and I'm jumping ahead here because we haven't talked about this yet, is if we read into the movie's light suggestion that Frank may have molested or assaulted Kirsty as a child.
Right.
Then maybe the dream's about that. Like with the baby crying and like the sheet.
And like hiding under the covers or something.
Maybe.
Okay, could be. That could be. That's an interesting idea.
It's an interesting idea. I think it is tenuous at best.
Very tenuous for sure.
But I'm not really sure how else to interpret that scene. Again, like beyond, ooh, spooky.
Yeah, right. Which is honestly, it could just be that. It could be something to do with Cenobites, like, giving her some sort of weird vision or so. Yeah, who knows? Interesting. Okay. Well, then we move forward and we get to the first murder. Julia goes to a bar, picks up a guy, and brings him back so that she can feed him to Frank. And I thought this was an interesting detail, is that this first guy she brings back, you can tell she's kind of hesitant about doing this. She's a little uncomfortable with it. But this first guy she brings back makes it a little bit easier by being kind of a weird, abusive creep, where he's like kissing her and she's acting strange, and he can tell she's acting strange, and we know why she's acting strange, but he thinks like that she's just gonna like flake on him and like get cold feet. And I don't remember the exact line he says, but he says something. He basically threatens her about like not changing her mind
Mhm.
And basically like you know, like, oh, don't you dare tell me no now, or something. Like, I don't remember exactly what he says, but I thought that was interesting, and so I wanted to know if that came from the book, of the first guy, the first victim she brings back, making it easier for her to kill him by him being a creep.
I don't remember that happening in the book. I do feel like there is kind of a progression to where, like, the last guy that she brings back, like, tries to change his mind and leave, but then she has to murder him
Yeah.
still. Um, but I don't remember any of them, like, specifically being overtly creepy in
Okay.
that way. I mean, I guess they're all kind of creeps in a sense,
Are
but
they?
because they're all, like, adulterers and, like,
Oh, well, do we know that for sure?
yeah.
Okay, because in the movie, I don't know if you get that. They're just, I thought they
I
were
mean,
just guys in
we
a
know
bar
that for
she's
sure in
picking
the
up.
book.
Okay. I was about to say, in the movie, they just appear to be dudes at the bar she's picking,
Yeah.
but just guys that want to sleep with her, which is, there's no implication that they're all like married necessarily in the book, or in the movie rather. But yeah, this first guy definitely is overtly a creep to her, which I thought was, I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But then we get to the actual murder, and this surprised me. I thought she was just gonna like throw him in the room and let Frank gnaw on him or whatever. But no, she has to, at least at the beginning, she has to murder the guy because Frank is not strong enough. He's just a
Yeah.
little weird gooey corpse thing. And so she pulls a claw hammer off the wall and just murders him with a hammer. And I wanted to know if that came from the book, that Julia actually does the murdering. Because again, I was like, oh, okay.
Well, in the book, she uses a knife, but yes, she does do the murdering. I liked the switch to the hammer, though. I thought that fit well for the situation, that she would use like a household tool
Yeah.
and not necessarily like a murdering tool.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and also because he needs to seemingly drink his blood or something.
Yeah.
And so hitting him with a hammer maybe in the head and knocking him out would, he would lose less blood and make, so
Right.
it's a better meal for Frank, I would guess. I don't know. Another detail I thought was super interesting about the relationship between Frank and Julia, which we see more and more as the movie goes on, is that Frank is also clearly an abusive creep, and that Julia just kind of happens to be into him partially because of that, but she is
Mhm.
also a victim of his abusive creepiness.
Yeah.
And I thought the movie kind of at least touches on some very interesting and kind of dark ideas about abuse and sexual attraction, and the way that those things can get kind of mixed up, and it isn't like a clean cut simple thing of like, well, this guy's an abusive asshole, so like how could any woman ever find him attractive kind of thing. Like, there are elements of that she actually finds attractive, and it's this complicated miasma of stuff. And I wanted to know if you felt like that element was came from the book, because I thought it was really compelling in the movie.
Yeah, that definitely. It's kind of a brief exploration in
Yes,
both the book
yeah.
and the movie, but both touch on the idea that Julia and Frank's encounter might not have been like completely consensual.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, that's interesting, because I wasn't even reading it necessarily that way, but I can see that in the movie for sure. I wasn't even necessarily referring to their first encounter not being completely consensual, but that's definitely there in the movie. I was more so talking about how he's, even if it was consensual, he from there on, their relationship, he becomes very weird and abusive and like possessive, and clearly does not care about her. Like, he's just an
Mhm.
abusive asshole. But yes, also that first scene, it is at the very least in the movie, he's being very forceful, and how much she is consenting is debatable, and how much he convinces her to consent is, the movie leaves it all kind of vague, or it leaves a lot of it up to interpretation, because it's hard to tell just from, the kind of brief interactions that we see. But
yeah, it's similar in the book. I think I was kind of trying to find the passage, but I couldn't find it. But at one point, she's reminiscing on her encounter with Frank
Yeah.
before the wedding. And the way that she recalls it, she's like thinking about it, and she's like, I guess it was kind of almost more like rape.
Mm.
Literally says
So yeah.
but I liked it.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, the book
So
explicitly goes there
yeah.
as part of that conversation. Interesting, because I was more talking about the vague idea of not so much like, oh, he raped her or whatever, but like he is abusive and manipulative,
Mhm.
and you can tell that he is abusive and manipulative to her, and she doesn't necessarily like that, but she also kind of does. It's weird, and I thought that was all just super interesting. And like you said, it is a very kind of surface level thing.
Yeah, it's like barely touched on
It's
in
yeah, the
both.
movie doesn't well, and I think this movie does this with a lot of what it's doing, which I thought works, especially in a horror movie like this, is it doesn't really give you like tell you its point of view on any of this stuff necessarily. It's just
Yeah.
kind of showing you this relationship and their relationship dynamic and going, think about this what you will. And so yeah, but it definitely, if I had to guess, it does feel like it's exploring, and from what we know of Clive Barker's background with him having been a prostitute, which I looked it up and this is on his Wikipedia page. We had one of our patrons mentioned that we were wondering what hustler meant, and it is on his Wikipedia page that in his younger days Clive Barker was essentially a male escort for a while in his when he was younger. And I say younger, I don't know how old he was, but before he became a writer and a director and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that probably that time of his life, he was processing and dealing with a lot of mixed emotions about how that all felt, and the dynamics of being a sex worker, and that's obviously different than abusive relationship, but there can be similar weird dynamics of like, this person is, maybe the person paying you is an asshole and is kind of abusive, but maybe you're also enjoying having sex with them. Like there's all this weird stuff mixed up in it, and it feels like an author trying to express that through this story, but not necessarily comment on like,
Yeah.
or give an opinion on like how you should feel about all that.
Yeah, for
Just
sure.
like these are things that happen to people, and it's hard and weird to deal with, and yeah, it can lead to you making weird rash decisions like murdering a bunch of guys from a bar so that your ex-boyfriend affair guy can come back to life. Yeah, I don't know, I thought it was really compelling. Another thing that I thought, so then we jump to Kirsty, who hasn't really been in the movie much to this point. We're aware of her. I think we've seen like a phone call or something like that, but we haven't really seen much of her in the movie at this point. But we cut to her and she's working in a pet store, it would appear.
Mm-hmm.
And at this pet store, this guy who we've seen twice. This is the second time we've seen him. I think the other time she was just like walking down the street and saw this guy.
Yeah.
Appears to be a homeless guy. And he walks into this pet store she's working at, and he just eats a bunch of crickets out of like the cricket enclosure in front of her.
Yeah.
And then leaves. And we're like, what? And I wanted to know if that guy came from the book.
He does not. This character was added for the movie. I didn't like this edition. More on that later.
Okay. We'll get to that later then. Back to Julia, though. One of the things that I thought was fun in the movie that you notice is that I talked about how kind of hesitant she seemed to kill the first guy, and like clearly like, figuring out this whole situation. But as it goes on and we get a little bit of a montage of her bringing guys back, she clearly grows more and more comfortable with it, to the point where we have this shot of her like lounging, drinking a glass of wine. And in this one single shot, her expression kind of goes from unsure or uncomfortable, and she leans forward and like gets this kind of sick, weird smile on her face. And I think representing the fact that she has gone from being hesitant and unsure about doing this to kind of enjoying killing these guys. And I thought that was compelling, and I wanted to know if it came from the book.
So more comfortable with it. Yeah, I think you could get that read. I don't know about seeming to enjoy it eventually. That was not something that I got from the book. But I do think that arc for her makes sense, given her backstory of like falling in with Frank and being easily influenced by him.
I would agree. I think that the idea there is almost as much as anything is that Frank's influence is like rubbing off on her.
Yeah.
And she is, she's being corrupted by him and becoming more like him in the sense that she's kind of becoming masochist or sadistic, not masochistic, but yeah. One scene in the movie, so Frank gets more and more whole as he's eating more and more people.
He becomes more humanoid.
And he's able to eventually, at this point, he's up and walking around. He's still very juicy.
Yes.
Still very gooey. But we get this fun scene where he is now wearing clothes, and there's this, I think it's only in one of the scenes, he is wearing like this black suit while he is this bloody, goopy skeleton man. And I thought that was a really fun look, and I wanted to know if it came from the book. He's very devilish in that moment. Like, look, the devil wearing a suit, he's all red, and I thought that was a lot of fun, and I wanted to know if it was described in the book.
I don't think Frank is ever described as wearing a suit in the book. At one point, he's wrapped in bandages like a mummy.
Okay.
No suit, though.
Yeah. Boo, boring. Well, I say that, it's fine. I will say, I also started to notice that as they killed more and more people, initially it's definitely helping him. Yeah. He's getting less goopy and less whatever. But then as it went on, it didn't seem like he was changing all that much anymore. And I was wondering if that was going to end up being anything. I was like, are these murders even helping him anymore at this point? Or are they just doing it because... And I wanted to know if that was mentioned in the book or what was going on there, or if if you have any other information.
That wasn't something that was mentioned in the book. Like, none of them ever described it seeming to not help him or to not be doing anything.
Yeah.
So I think that might have just been like the visual effects. And maybe they didn't progress it.
I think they did.
In a good way.
They did. They definitely progressed it, and I could see him getting more and more, but there just felt like we hit a point where I was like, well, I thought eventually he was going to... I was expecting it to be more like the Mummy. Yeah. The 1999 Mummy, where he's like getting his skin back and like...
Right.
Where he has a few patches of like gross whatever, but is mostly human looking. But he hit a point eventually where he was just like a bloody skeleton man. And he just kind of stayed there.
He's like a science book diagram where they're showing how the musculature.
Yes, exactly. And I felt like he just sat there, and I was like, okay, but like, is he going to get any better from here? And so they definitely showed the progression at the beginning part. I just got to a point where I'm like, well, is he ever going to like get his skin back or whatever? But your note, I think, makes sense, is that,
I think he ends up at like roughly the same place in both the book and the movie, like mostly put back together. But then he has to steal somebody's skin in order to leave the house.
And the movie eventually reveals that he needs to take somebody else's skin, which is fun and creepy. It's just, I was not, in my brain, the way this was going to work was that he was just going to fully regenerate eventually.
Right. You would think.
Yes. And not that he needed to like wear a skin suit, which again is very fun. I have no problem with it. And once that was revealed, I was like, oh, okay. But I wrote this question like prior to the skin suit scene. And I was like, oh, so that makes sense. A specific line I need to know if it comes from the book because it's in the trailer, and a very well-known line from the movie is the Cenobites show up. Kirsty accidentally summons them in like the hospital. A whole big chase scene with the whatever it's called in the summary, which
the engineer.
The engineer, which is never. You only know it's called that in the credits / maybe it's mentioned in the book. I don't know if it comes from the book or not, but
otherwise it kind of made me think of the Grievers.
It did
from the Maze Runner.
It actually was like a little
griever.
grievery. Now that you mention it, that is actually a pretty good griever.
Yeah, because it was like a weird like scorpion thing.
Yeah, that like had extra limbs and like weird metal
and was kind of gooey
and kind of you're actually it's a pretty good griever. Did somebody mention that? Now I'm having this weird...
I could not even begin to tell you.
I'm having this weird memory that may be made up of a commenter during the Maze Runner episodes being like, Hellraiser, something about Hellraiser. Maybe not.
If that was you, reveal yourself.
I very well may be imagining that. But you're right. It actually totally looks like a creeper. That's hilarious. But point being... She summons them all, and they show up and they grab her, and they're gonna like kill her and take her to the Hell Realm or whatever. But she says to them, "Hey, actually, I know where Frank is. Frank, he came back, like because she
Yeah.
has seen him at this point, and almost she just barely escaped him. That was the scene prior to this, and she's like, I will take you to Frank, and you can take him back because he escaped you or whatever." And they're like, I don't know, sounds like you might be lying, but they're gonna give her a shot to recoup on this offer. But the threat is that if she doesn't deliver, they will tear your soul apart. And I
Yeah.
wanted to know if the line "will tear your soul apart" came from the book, because it's in the trailer.
I mean, there's a pretty close approximation in the book. In the book, the line is, "Deliver him alive to us then, make him confess himself, and maybe we won't tear your soul apart."
Okay, so the movie just makes it more active.
Yes.
An active threat of what will happen if she doesn't do it, as opposed to
Correct.
the negative of like, we won't do this if you do. Yeah, cool. But yeah, clearly comes from that line.
Mm-hmm.
So we just talked about it, but does Frank take Larry's skin? Is that who gets skinned so that Frank can have a skin suit?
Yes.
Is it
Poor Larry.
poor Larry? I mean, Larry kind of sucked, to be fair. Not that he sucked.
He was nothing.
He was nothing.
He was
I
nothing.
mean, well, to be fair to Kirsty, I think she would disagree.
But,
But,
yes, definitely. They appeared to have a good father-daughter
they appeared
relationship.
to have a good father-daughter relationship, which actually takes me back to, well, is another thing that I'll talk about later about how this movie could be improved, which very minor things because it's already very good, and we'll get to it later, but that would be another part of it. So Frank takes Larry's skin, and then we get to the big final confrontation. Kirsty shows up, trying to, get, because she has to basically, and I don't know if the movie did a great job of explaining this in the movie, but she essentially has to get Frank to confess that he is Frank.
Yeah, she has to make him name himself.
So that the Cenobites will know, oh, it is him, and then they can take him back so that they're not like taking the wrong person or something as part of their weird Cenobite code or whatever. And so Julia grabs a Kirsty, and Frank is like gonna stab her and kill her so to get her out of the way. And then at the last second, as he's coming at her with his switchblade, Kirsty is able to throw Julia off of her and run, and Frank accidentally stabs Julia in like the stomach, and then seemingly decides to just fully kill her with his neck finger thing, which I guess is how he drains people. I guess where he like shoves his fingers into their neck instead of. I guess they thought it would be too vampire-y
they
for
probably
him to
didn't
like
want him
bite
to
and
be
suck
like a
their blood.
vampire.
Which is fine. It's also, I think it's also a good like sexual kind of imagery to how he drains people, like fingering them. Like it ties in with everything else the movie is doing in a way that I think works
with the themes.
Yes, I think it works. But I was like, oh, he just kills Julia, and I wanted to know if that happened in the movie or in the book, and if he seemingly just, because I was like, initially when he stabbed her, I thought like, oh well, like she's probably injured, but like probably not that. I don't know.
It was just a little stab.
But he just immediately kills her, and I was like, oh, okay. And so I wanted to know if that happened in the book, and like why he just decides to kill her beyond. Well, anyways, go ahead.
This happens pretty much exactly as it does in the book. Julia is holding Kirsty so that Frank can kill her, but Kirsty manages to twist out of the way at the last second, and Frank accidentally stabs Julia instead. And because Frank has no actual loyalty to or use for Julia beyond helping him get his body back, he just goes ahead and sucks the life out of her. Frank does not even actually like Julia.
Right. And that's fair. Like I could get that like, she's expendable to him. He doesn't actually care about her.
She is a means to an end.
Right. That all tracks with his character. Totally fine. I guess I was just surprised at how quickly. And also, I was like, was he trying to stab her? Because it seemed like he had plenty of time. Maybe this is more kind of some clunkiness in the editing / filmmaking of like, he's going to lunge at her with the knife, and then it seems like he could have easily stopped, but I don't know. I was like, oh, did he mean to stab her? Like, I didn't know if maybe the book, like, was he actually
I
trying to kill
don't think he
Julia?
means to stab
No.
her, but I think once he does, he's like,
Nah, yeah, whatever.
well, we might as well not let this go to waste.
Right. Makes sense. Okay. Well, there's this other little detail that I actually don't have anywhere in here, and I don't know if you have anything on it, that I was thinking back on the movie. I had this question I was very confused about. Julie, he drains her, and she seems to be completely dead.
Mm-hmm.
But then she ends up in the bed, in a bed later with the box, and I'm like, how did she get there? Did that happen in the book? Because later Kirsty finds the box, the whatever, which it's so funny. It's called the something config. What is it called?
The Marchand or
Le
something
Marchand
like that.
configuration or whatever. It's so funny. That's like, I knew it was called that, but they never say it in the movie.
They never.
It's never mentioned in the movie. I was like, oh, okay. Literally never said in the movie, in this movie at least. But so yeah, later Kirsty finds the box by finding Julia's like flayed body. So maybe the Cenobites like picked her up and put her in the bed and flayed her open for some reason. You know what I mean? I was just like, what happened there? Maybe there's a deleted scene or something.
Maybe there is. I don't know, because in the end of the book is similarly kind of confusing with what's going on with Julia, because so what happens here happens, like she gets stabbed and then Frank sucks the life out of her, and then later on, as Kirsty is leaving the house, she sees Julia now like downstairs in her wedding dress, but like holding her head in her lap, but there's no indication that she got beheaded at any point. And then I think
the Cenobites must do.
Yeah, there was something going on there that I don't know. I was not really sure how to interpret.
I guess the idea is just that the Cenobites like fuck around with corpses for fun. I
think so. Yeah.
I just, because I was like, well, did maybe, and then I was like, well, initially I was like, maybe she was somehow alive still, but she seemed very dead, because you see her like kind of desiccated, like after he drains her. She seems dead. And I was like, well, maybe she wasn't dead and she got up and got the box to try to do something with it or something, but that didn't seem feasible. So I guess the answer is just, but then if that's the case, why did the Cenobites leave the box in her hand? Where does Kirsty get the box in the book when she gets it again, or does she just have it the whole time?
She does it. Okay.
Sorry, I missed.
You're really jumping ahead here.
Oh, well, we don't have to. We can wait, and would it make sense? I just don't have these questions. I just didn't ask these questions, so, or I guess I kind of did later. We can get to that if that.
Yeah.
Okay. She gets up in the attic. I think Frank just chases her up into the attic. She gets up in the attic. Frank chases her there, and this is where they're having kind of their back and forth, and she gets Frank to admit or say that he is Frank, even though he's wearing Larry's skin. And I love that. And when this happens, this is the Cenobites kind of moment. They have the information that they need so they can show up and take Frank away. But they arrive in the movie like Gandalf arriving with the sun on the third day at Helm's Deep, like the portals opening in Endgame, which I thought was a lot of fun, where after he says that, Frank is like, has Kirsty cornered and is about to kill her. But then all of a sudden this light starts coming through the windows, the same way it did in the very beginning of the movie when he opened the box at the beginning. This light starts kind of shining through the windows, and you start hearing the sound and stuff, and oh shit, the Cenobites are here. And I thought that was a lot of fun that they show up, like Gandalf. And I wanted to know if it was similar in the book to how they kind of arrived in the nick of time.
Kind of. They do arrive in the nick of time, but it's not as dramatic as what the movie does.
Okay.
So Frank has Kirsty cornered in the room, and it's dark. None of the lights are on. So she gets him to call himself Frank, and then ducks out of the way as he swings a knife at her. And then the single light bulb in the room flickers on, and we hear like the bells tolling that indicate the Cenobites are coming, and then they appear in the room.
Okay, so similar, but just
Similar,
not, yeah, like you said,
yeah.
not as dramatic. That makes sense.
Not really a Gandalf vibe.
Yeah. So they show up and they're able to take Frank back to hell by hooking him with a billion hooks in the same way they did in the beginning, seemingly. And we get this shot of Frank just flayed open by all of these different hooks. And I wanted to know if that is how he is vanquished in the book. Is he torn apart by hooks again?
Yes, but again, not as dramatically as in the movie. We don't see him get torn to like literal pieces. They hook him and start to drag him back into their realm, and we see like his chest is described as starting to split open before Kirsty runs
Yeah,
out
he
of the
doesn't rip
room.
into pieces.
Yeah.
Which I assume this is another one of those scenes, and not assume, I know it is from what I read, that they had to edit down. His death in the initial version of it was more graphic, and they had to limit how much they showed because for ratings. But another line here that I needed to know if it's in the book, and I unfortunately I'm going to spring this on you at the last second, is does he say Jesus wept as he's about to be torn apart?
I do not recall him saying that, no.
I assumed he wouldn't, because I believe I read when I was doing research for the prequel that they actually, initially that line was supposed to be just him saying fuck you to Kirsty, I believe. And then for some reason, somebody had the idea of him saying Jesus wept, which I was like, I'm not even sure I get it. I don't even sure I get why
Frank would be saying that.
that in that moment.
Because I think in the book,
I don't even know the context of Jesus wept necessarily, like what that means and why it would be applicable in that moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because I think in the book he does say "fuck you."
See,
I think he's like "fuck you, you bitch, you cheated" or something like that.
I believe that is what it was originally supposed to be in the movie, and then this Jesus wept line came from somebody or something, and I don't remember why or who or where. And I'm like, okay, but what does it mean? Like, why would he say that? I don't know. If anybody knows like the context of like that, because I don't even know. Like, I've heard Jesus wept used in other contexts, but I'm not even sure exactly what that saying is referring to. Like, what emotion or what, like, when you would use that normally. When would you use Jesus wept normally? Any of our maybe more Christian listeners have an idea or know what's going on there? Then right after that, so they kill Frank. He's been ripped apart, but the Cenobites decide, surprise, we're not done with you. We decided that we're not just going to take Frank. We're also going to take you. And as the kind of the line that instigates this, as she realizes she's in trouble, is that Pinhead turns to her and says, and it is one of the other, if not maybe the most famous line from the movie, which is, "We have such sights to show you." And I wanted to know if that line came from the book.
I don't recall this line being in the book.
So I was able to find a PDF and searched it, and it's not.
It's not, okay.
I searched like every variation on it possible. Just even the word sight is not in the book, crazily enough. So yeah, I'm pretty confident it's not. After I saw that you weren't sure, I was like, I think I could find a PDF. So, but Kirsty then runs to the other room, and this makes sense why you wanted to answer this now. Kirsty runs to the other room. She finds the box in Julia's hands as her flayed corpse on her bed that I guess one of the Cenobites did at some point, but I was confused. I'm now extra confused, assuming a Cenobite did that, which they must have, why they left the box there, but whatever. Maybe they can't touch it or something. I don't know. No, because he hasn't. Anyways. Does Kirsty use the box and close it in order to banish the Cenobites and escape their vengeance or whatever? It also causes the house to collapse in the movie a little bit. Kind of stops collapsing after they get out.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
No, none of that happens in the book.
Okay.
Kirsty doesn't have to banish the Cenobites. They just take Frank and go.
Okay. So that's, we'll talk more about that.
Yeah, I have so many thoughts on that, actually.
I do too, because
later.
I completely agree. Yeah. So then the weird mutant scorpion thing, which is apparently called the engineer, shows up, or the griever shows up at the door and is kind of the final boss. And I thought this was incredibly lame, which I already thought all of this was kind of lame. But specifically, and this was also all the special effects of her like zapping them with the box. It was all the stuff done in like a weekend,
the little,
like a Coke Field weekend or whatever.
Yeah. And it did look like
it
that.
doesn't look great. But does the engineer show up as a lame final boss that she has to defeat?
No, that creature is not in the book at all, and I felt similarly about it and this scene.
Even if you're gonna do the thing where she has to defeat them all, why would you not make one of the actual like
they're so much
interesting
cooler looking than that
Cenobites,
thing?
the main, like the final one? This engineer thing, I don't get why that's the final one. It's like the least interesting because it's just this weird blob of it's like body parts or something. I don't know.
I guess maybe they were just really proud of it.
I don't know if you noticed, but in some of the hospital scene, in some of those hallway shots, you could see the cart they were pushing.
Oh, really?
You could
I
see
did not notice.
very, very minimally, but in the back, like it was on like a wheelchair or something.
Nice.
You could see the whatever mechanism it was being supported on and being pushed down that hallway on. You could kind of see it. Now, to be fair to the movie, they weren't expecting people to watch it on Ultra HD, 4K, blah blah blah. But yeah. Then my final question is: Kirsty at the end of the movie, she gets the box. She vanquishes the Cenobites, and then she escapes with her boyfriend, and she decides she needs to destroy the box as they go stand in some random abandoned lot, I guess. And there's a fire, and she throws the box in the fire to destroy it. But as this is happening, as they're watching it burn, the creepy homeless guy that was eating crickets in the pet store shows up. And they both just stare at him, and he walks over and grabs it out of the fire, catches fire. His body burns away, and it is revealed that he is this giant winged skeletal horse thing, which was kind of cool.
I mean, it's cool looking.
Yeah, it's a cool looking like creature, and it like flies away past them. And then we get the reveal that I guess he gave the box, the skeleton horse thing gave the box back to the guy from the beginning who gave it to Frank or sold it to Frank or whatever.
Yeah, and he's selling it again.
And he's selling it to a new guy. And I really liked that we get the exact same opening shot where in the opening of the movie, as the credits are rolling, the final credit that says like directed by Clive Barker or whatever, pushes back and it's revealed inside like the little circle on the side of the box. And that's like the opening shot. The camera pulls out of the box, basically. It's almost like the credits were happening inside the box. And then the final shot of the movie is the same thing where I believe we see the shot of like Kirsty and Steve standing there in the field. And then it pulls back and that is like inside the box. And then we see the final scene, basically just showing the cyclical nature. The box is now handing off to somebody else. I wanted to know if the movie or the book ended that way.
No, none of that is from the book. At the end of the book, the Cenobites leave the box with Kirsty, and she becomes a sort of unofficial guardian of the box.
Okay.
While I like the idea of the box ending up back being sold again and like the cyclical nature of that, I think that the way the movie did it was ham-fisted.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
The creepy guy who was following Kirsty around seems to exist solely for this moment, but then there's no reason for him to have been stalking Kirsty before this because she doesn't have the box.
No.
I like where the movie ended, but I felt like the movie didn't know how to get there in a satisfying way. So it was just like, I don't know, do this.
I would completely agree with that. It does feel like they did not know. They knew they wanted to end with the box being backed with the guy,
selling it
exact
again.
same shot, opening shot of the movie. Oh, the horror continues. But yeah, it makes no sense in any real ways. It's like, okay, this random guy. I have no idea. I will say I saw somebody on Reddit or something saying that their kind of headcanon for the whole end of this movie was basically the idea, and it also goes back to why the Cenobites renege on their deal with Kirsty and decide to take her as well, is because the Cenobites can see, and maybe this person has seen future movies that this makes this more
Perhaps.
reasonable of an explanation. But his argument was something like the Cenobites are able to sense like there's a darkness about you. There's like a weird darkness in Kirsty that they find appealing, and they want to take her for some reason. And that maybe that is also why this particular skeletal horse homeless man is following her around. It's a weird,
you know what,
ham-fisted ass explanation, but
if there's further lore in other movies that supports that, God bless.
yeah. But in this movie, it doesn't make a lick of sense.
No,
I would completely agree with that. All right, those are all my questions for Was That in the Book? But I do have a few questions that I'm going to ask in Lost in Adaptation.
Just show me the way to get out of here, and I'll be on my way.
Where is it lost?
Yes, and I want to get unlost as soon as possible.
There's this one random moment in the movie that is very strange, and I wanted to know if you had any insight from the book. Larry and Julia start having sex at one point, and while they're having sex, Frank was like hiding in the closet.
Yeah.
And he walks out carrying his switchblade, and it seems like he might be about to kill Larry in this moment. He's like walking over to the bed, and like Julia's kind of freaking out because she can kind of see him. And you're like, oh no, he's going to kill Larry. But then he just stands there watching them, and then he holds up a dead rat that he has, which he just like cuts in half.
Yeah.
And then he backs away and the scene ends. And I was like, what? And I wanted to know if that happened in the book, and if so, what?
I can't even explain this scene, but I really hated it. Really was like not a fan. There is kind of a similar scene in the book where Julia has sex with Larry during a storm to keep him from going into Frank's room, which is how the scene starts.
Yeah.
But Frank just watches them through a crack in the door. He doesn't walk out and mutilate a rat. Much like the Kirsty dream sequence, this is another thing that I don't know how to interpret outside of the movie just wanting to be creepy and upsetting.
This one in particular, like the dream one, it's kind of
weird
symbolism-y
that you're like,
that you
okay,
can, I'll come up with something for it. This I'm like, what?
I don't know, man.
I don't get it at all. Yeah, it makes no sense. Okay, sure. So once we get to the big kind of climax with Frank, where Frank is chasing Kirsty around and is like threatening to kill her, he has a couple lines of dialogue to Kirsty that where he says something like, he's like, well, it's me, I'm Frank, don't you remember? And then he says something along the lines of, you've grown, you're really beautiful. And I got the vibe that maybe the movie was implying slightly that Frank may have been, he was a creep, but may have been specifically sexually assaulted Kirsty when she was younger, potentially, because we know that, like, yeah. So I wanted to know if you felt like, if you got that vibe at all from the movie, and if so, if it felt like it was came from the book, if there's any more there. I do want to clarify that I don't think that the movie is like explicitly implying that he assaulted her or anything, just that it kind of vaguely gives the illusion that may
lightly suggests that perhaps this is something.
I don't think there's
happened.
anything concrete in the movie to derive that from. It's more so just a vibes thing. But I wanted to know if you agreed with that at all, or if it felt like it came from the book, or yeah.
So this is one of the biggest changes from book to movie that we haven't even touched on yet. In the book, Kirsty is not Larry's daughter.
Oh.
She's a friend of his who harbors very obvious feelings for him.
Interesting. Yeah, that's very different.
Yes, very different. In general, I think this is a good change. I think it's an easier explanation for why she's around all the time and for the tension between her and Julia.
Yeah. because Julia's her stepmom. They
Yeah.
have this weird relationship.
Yeah, they have
dynamic,
kind of a
yeah.
weird relationship. I agree with you that I think the movie is like lightly suggesting
Yeah.
that Frank may have perhaps assaulted her as a child, but not outright implying it.
He could also just be a creep saying creepy
Yes.
shit. It doesn't
Yes,
necessarily mean that,
definitely.
yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not sure there's any suggestion of that beyond this one moment.
I would agree.
Frank is definitely still a creep in the book, just in a different way. The first time he sees Kirsty outside the window, he decides that he's going to seduce her because she's ugly, and ugly girls are willing to do freakier shit than pretty girls. He's a gem,
Real
that
great
one.
guy.
He's a great guy.
Real great guy.
He's up there, top 10.
Fantastic. Great. Amazing. All right. My final question for Lost in Adaptation is there any more information in the book about like how they solved the puzzle box? Because in the movie, they really just seem to kind of fumble with it and like rub their fingers on it a little, and it just immediately opens every time. And so I wanted to know if there's any more, and there's not even any like just talk in the movie about like how they're doing, there's just, it seems to be like almost the book is like the box is like almost showing them how to open it, or it's anyways. Any more in the book?
I said this while reading, and I'll say it again. The box doesn't seem all that hard to solve.
Yeah.
In both the book and the movie, Frank makes pretty short work of it, and Kirsty seems to solve it completely by accident.
Yes.
Like, we're told that the box is this basically impossible puzzle, but I don't know if maybe that's supposed to be some kind of red herring. Like, maybe it's actually really easy to solve.
That was my thought.
Because the Cenobites want people to solve it. Or maybe, like, if there's a darkness in you,
so
the box, like, opens for you easily. I don't know.
That's interesting, because initially I was going to say the first thing, I was like, that was kind of what I was getting from it, is that maybe it's actually just not hard to open.
Yeah.
Like, that's the point, is that they want people to be able to open it and
Yes.
summon them. So, but I think there's maybe that does lend a little credence to that Reddit comment I read of maybe why Kirsty is able to open it so easily is if there is something else going on with her or whatever. I don't know. Again, we don't get any of that in this movie. So that is absolutely either pure speculation, headcanon, or is because of things that happen in later movies. I know she's in the first at least 3 movies. I think she may be in more, but she's at least in the first few movies. So maybe we get more information. But that would actually be another potential thing, is that maybe that does tie into the idea that she has something similar to whatever was going on with Frank, and that's why she's able to open it so easily. But again, if that's the case, this movie did not set that up at all.
No.
So, all right, those are all my questions. It's time now to find out what Katie thought was better in the book.
You like to read?
Oh, yes. I love to read.
What do you like to read?
Everything.
At the very beginning of the book, this is maybe like paragraph 2, there's a description of everything Frank has set up for his summoning ritual, which includes a jug of his urine that he's been collecting over the past week.
Piss jugs.
And now it's just like a little detail.
Way of the road, Bubbles.
Just a little detail that let me know up front what I was in for with this book.
Yeah.
Julia in the movie, not really how I pictured Julia.
Interesting.
She's giving like 1980s business bitch.
Yes.
Like high-powered career woman.
Yes.
Which, to be fair, is right in line with a villainous woman for the era.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it also makes sense for her to serve evil stepmother.
Yes.
But reading the book, I definitely pictured her as more of an ingenue who then had like the surprise twist of being a villain.
I could see that, yeah.
Which I think is more interesting.
I don't know. I really thought she was, I thought she was a fascinating character in the movie. I thought she was really interesting because, and I actually think I could see it both ways. I could see the idea of her being like you said, more of an ingenue who is like kind of corrupted by this evil guy or whatever, or the surprise twist of her being the villain kind of. I guess it's not like a huge twist, or it's a twist we find out in the first act, but you know what I mean, like the reveal
like
that
but like the juxtaposition
of her
like,
appearance
of
versus her
appearing
actions.
to be like a typical like female heroine,
Yes,
but then actually she's like rotten to the core.
right. There's definitely something interesting there. I thought, I don't know, maybe it's just because I found her look so compellingly interesting in the movie.
She does. She
has such a look.
Yes.
Her hair is
sky high,
like short-ish, but like blown out.
She's
like
got
this,
kind of a mullet.
Yeah.
Like a mullety, like that she teases real high on the top.
High and back.
It's very 80s.
Yes. And then she has these huge star earrings.
I
she
fucking
wears all
want
the
those
time.
earrings. Those massive tortoiseshell star earrings. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I was Googling those during the movie to see if anybody had made a dupe, and nobody has.
Yeah, that was fantastic. But maybe it's just because she was so unique. Like, I think the other thing is she kept reminding me of people. I think she kept reminding me of the actress. I haven't even seen the show. The actress who plays in Succession. I know we've never watched Succession, but you know the redhead in that show who's like, or maybe she's blonde. Her character's name is Shiv, I think. But she's like the woman who got nominated for 1 million awards from that show. She kind of looks like her. I like to the point where I like Googled to see if it was like her daughter or something like that. And it's not. But she also reminded me a little bit of Helly from Severance, the actress who plays Helly and Helena or whatever her name is in Severance. Something about her features just kind of reminded me of both those actresses. But yeah, I actually liked this weird, like, I think there is also still a juxtaposition of the, like, she has this like uptight 80s like bitchy wife kind of look in the movie, but I like the idea that the thing she's desperately wants is just to fuck. Like, that's a weird kind of, even that already feels kind of like, it's almost to me the fact that like the ingenue looking character, the reveal or like the juxtaposition of her like being like super horny and just wanting to bring back this guy who fucked her brains out one time and who she like has this weird obsession with almost feels too obvious to me.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's almost like what I expect. Like it is like a fun juxtaposition, but it's almost like an expected juxtaposition. Whereas the visual of Julia in this movie as like this seemingly career-oriented, like bitchy,
right,
like
typically portrayed as like an ice queen.
Yes, those characters are almost always kind of depicted without like sexual desire or interest or whatever. Their interest is like business or whatever. You know what I mean? And so like that is almost a more interesting juxtaposition that woman is like, I need this greasy weirdo who fucked my brains out, was kind of fun. You know what I mean? I don't know. I actually thought that was almost a more unexpected and interesting visual juxtaposition than
That's fair. That's fair.
I don't know. I thought it was interesting.
Another thing from the book that I just personally found interesting that the movie completely drops is that the Cenobites actually can't come get Frank. Because, like, at one point in the movie, he's like, we need to hurry up and rebuild my body before they, like, come find me.
Yeah.
But they actually can't come get him because they have to be summoned.
Oh.
They can't come through on their own.
Which that is the case in the movie. It's just that Frank doesn't know that.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. Frank's just unaware of that.
Okay, fair enough.
Because they don't come back until Kirsty resummons them.
Right.
At least that was my vibe. That was
don't seem to know that Frank is gone at that point in the movie.
Yeah, I don't know. But you're right. But that is the vibe I got in the movie, I will say, is that they couldn't have come back unless Kirsty, like they wouldn't have been able to come get him unless she opened the box, which she did.
But in the book, Frank very explicitly like knows that they can't come get him.
Yeah, the vibe I got in the movie is just that he's not aware that they're unable to come back.
Well, weigh in on that.
Yeah.
Tell us what you think. I really hated the end of the movie, but more on that later.
Yeah. Okay. We'll get to that. I mean, yeah, it's in your final verdict, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna have to chime in after your final verdict to talk
Okay.
about my potential like small tweaks that make this an
Mhm.
even better movie. Again, I want to stress I already think it's a very good movie. But all right, that was it for better in the book. Let's find out what Katie thought was better in the movie.
My life has taught me one lesson, Hugo, and not the one I thought it would. Happy endings only happen in the movies.
I really liked the little detail of Julia putting out her cigarette on the floor of the house. Just like the immediate show of disrespect
Yeah.
for the space.
Yeah, and just very quick character work. Like
Yeah.
immediately. Like,
Yes,
this lady
immediately
seems like
tells her everything. It tells us everything
she
we need
doesn't
to know
respect
about
her
her.
husband. This is her husband's childhood home.
Yeah.
He cares a lot about it. He's very excited to be here. She doesn't give a shit at all. She
No.
doesn't. Yeah.
We kind of talked about it, but I really liked the visual of the blood seeping through the floorboards and the heart like thing
Yeah.
like starting to like pump.
Yeah.
It was really gooey and gross.
Yeah, and I that was a fun. I saw a note when I was doing prequel research that the blood seeping into the floorboards was a reverse shot, obviously, because it doesn't leave any remnants. Is that they forced blood up through the nail holes or whatever,
Ugh,
and then reversed the
gross.
shot to
a lot
get
of
it
lot of
seeping,
reversing shots
to have it
in
look
this.
like it was seeping down in there, but also not like leaving any residue or anything.
Mm-hmm. I really liked the hospital wall opening to reveal the Cenobites' realm. I don't know why you would go in.
Yeah, into that
into-
evil
I-
hallway or
like,
whatever.
I would look at that and be like,
I'm good.
that's obviously a bad place
Yep,
to go.
Not going in there.
And that's why we're surviving the horror movie.
Yeah.
But I liked the wall opening, and then when she runs out and looks back, it's just like a smooth whole wall behind her. I thought that was fun. I liked that all of the Cenobites appear to Kirsty instead of just one, because it's only one of them in the book that appears in the hospital room, especially because we didn't see all of them at the beginning.
Yeah.
Like we do in the
Yeah.
book.
This is where they're first introduced to where
Yeah.
we actually see them all.
One
Including
detail.
my favorite, the guy who has the wind up teeth.
Yes.
That's just what he does. He always walks. I thought it was so funny every time he walked around the corner chomping. Just think of those little chattering teeth that you wind up.
But one detail about the scene that I did prefer in the book was the nurse coming in and the Cenobite being like, don't bother, she can't see or hear me.
Yeah.
I thought that was fun.
Uh-huh.
But overall, I liked that scene better in the movie. And I also liked the grisly reveal that Julia was just putting all of the men's corpses in the junk room.
Yeah. When Kirsty's hiding in there from Frank
like
later.
one of them falls out and like maggots fall
like,
everywhere.
Apparently, Kirsty was very good at being quiet because Frank did not hear that like 3 feet away.
Yeah, right.
She apparently made no noise. But yeah. All right, let's go talk about a few things the movie nailed.
As I expected, practically perfect in every way.
I thought the whole scene of Julia seducing her first victim at the bar and then bringing him back to the house was pretty spot on.
Uh-huh.
The line "come to daddy" is also from the book, which then again like kind of works on another level once we make Kirsty Larry's daughter.
Yes. And just makes it works on like multiple levels, because also going back to the thing of the potential implication that Frank was abused her as a child, that there was like an extra layer of creepiness to it for that.
Kirsty does see Julia bringing a man into the house, which then kicks off her like investigation of like, what is this bitch up to? Kirsty and Frank have an exchange as they're fighting, where Kirsty's like, I'm dreaming, and Frank is like, oh, I used to tell myself that, but some things have to be endured. That whole exchange is from the book. And then Kirsty throwing the box out of the window while fighting Frank.
Yeah, she's like,
also from the book.
And then just chucks it out the window.
And then like runs down and grabs it before she runs off.
Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and hit a few odds and ends.
my like first note that I made right off the bat was, oh my God, his fingernails are so disgusting.
They're so dirty that they felt overly fake dirty to me.
They're so dirty. They're like black.
Yes, to
underneath.
the point where I felt like, oh, well, they clearly dirtied them up, but they went almost too far because it looks like he just like scraped them through like motor oil,
Yeah.
and then like washed his hands, but left it all under his fingernails.
Gross.
Yeah, absolutely. I felt like when we were first introduced to Kirsty, I was like, I think Winona Ryder might be able to sue this actress for trademark infringement, because that opening scene with her, I thought it was when I knew it wasn't Winona Ryder, but holy shit, she looks just like her, and her aesthetic is very similar. And like I think they very clearly, this was like, we want Winona Ryder. We got different Winona Ryder.
We cannot afford Winona Ryder, so we have acquired dollar store Winona Ryder,
which I think she's great.
No, I thought she was great too.
Not as a disrespect to her, because I think she does a really good job in the movie. Like I think she's fantastic. Which she hasn't been in a ton of other stuff, but I thought she was really good in this.
Also, though, that fedora was a choice.
Yeah, it really was. Absolutely. I also thought you could tell throughout the movie that a lot of the side characters that show up are clearly British that have been redubbed to American. The movers were a couple that I thought were pretty obvious, but then also really, really obvious was Steve, Kirsty's boyfriend. That is the most British dude I have ever seen. He has like the flock of seagulls cut and his claw. He's so clearly a British guy that they redubbed
he also
accent.
looked like Ducky from Pretty in Pink.
True. But I was like, that is man.
But yes,
man is
he's
British.
very giving. He's giving like new wave, like for sure.
That man is British, and they clearly redubbed it. And I think that was a mistake. I don't think they needed to redub it.
I think this movie would have been just as good. With British accents.
I don't think there was any reason, and it just made it kind of it's silly.
I thought it was funny that Julia still had a British accent.
Yeah.
And I was like, maybe they decided that was fine since she's a villain.
Yeah, I also think they just thought, like, they probably didn't, because she's like a main character, they didn't want to redub her whole thing. So I think Kirsty is American, and I think the actor who plays Larry is American. I think the original premise was that these two, like, him and his daughter, they're like, and I don't know how much of this was spelled out in the movie. I don't know if this is in the book at all. My vibe of assuming that, like, what the original plot was supposed to be was that they're like moving to England to like move in with Julia in England, like for her job or something like that was what I assumed the original idea was. And so Larry and Kirsty are American,
right?
Everybody else is British,
and
Julia's British, and that's how he like met her on a business trip or something like that,
right? Because she's a business bitch.
And so that's what I assumed. And so she was, and I think when they redubbed everything, they decided she's too prominently, we don't want to redub her whole performance for several reasons. Probably one, just for the actress, like it would suck to have her whole performance redone. And two, like you said, I think they could just pass it. Like, it's easy to be like, well, she's the stepwife. He met her on a business trip. She's moving to America. She is British, like whatever, but it's still set in America. But I think it was probably the opposite of that was the original idea. There's like one line in the movie that they clearly dubbed in where she says something like, when they're like looking at the house, and she says something about like Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah, this is very clearly a house in New York. You're right. This old English estate is definitely somewhere near. Yeah. She's like, oh, this is something. She says something like,
she says like, it's at least it's not Brooklyn or something like that.
Brooklyn or whatever. Like the implication being it's like maybe like somewhere out in the suburbs or near New York or whatever. Yeah, I thought that was very funny.
My last thing here that I want to mention is props to Steve, because Kirsty's boyfriend, because he handles the end of this movie very well.
He really does,
like a champ.
He doesn't like negatively react to anything going on.
I would say he barely reacts to anything going on.
He probably reacts inappropriately. Like he's like too calm, cool, and collected given what is happening.
He's just, but he is He is there for her.
Yep.
No questions asked.
No questions asked. Before we get to the final verdict, we wanted to do you a favor or wanted to remind you that you could do us a favor by heading over to Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, Goodreads, any of those places. Interact. We'd love to hear what you have to say about Hellraiser. If you can answer any of our questions, we would love those. You can also help us out by heading over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you download and listen to our show. Write us a nice little review. Drop us a 5-star rating. That would be nice. And you can head over to patreon.com/thisfilmislit. Support us there at different levels. Get access to bonus content, all that kind of stuff. We just put out our bonus episode on the Rocky Horror Picture Show. If you want to listen to that at the $5 level. And at the $15 level, $15 per month, you get access to priority recommendations. If there's something you would really like for us to talk about, you can subscribe at that level, and we will request it, and we will eventually get to it. Katie, it's time for the final verdict.
Sentence fast, verdict after. That's stupid.
This week, my final verdict really comes down to one single aspect of the film. The ending. Mr. Barker, I hate to have to say this, but I think you've misunderstood your own characters. I liked some of the decisions that this movie made, like making Kirsty Larry's daughter and the goopy gore of Frank's grisly rebirth, but I absolutely hated the ending of this movie. I just don't think that the Cenobites would go back on their deal with Kirsty and try to take her too. That doesn't seem like their vibe at all. To me, they read more like any other demon, honor-bound by their own rules. And I totally understand that they might have wanted a climactic big finish for the movie with a showdown where the bad guys get their asses kicked. But the problem with that is that the Cenobites aren't actually the bad guys. Frank, and to a slightly lesser extent, Julia are. Clive Barker, you've misunderstood your own story. I am so deeply disappointed by this turn of events that I'm picking the book. Argue with me if you must. I'm willing to die on this hill.
Okay. I completely agree. So I want to chime in because I did have a couple. So I completely agree that it makes no sense for the Cenobite. It feels completely like the whole point of them is that they're chaotic neutral, kind of.
Yes.
And them showing up they save the day because they are there for the thing that they are there for. They are not there to trick Kirsty.
I mean, they're not even there to save the day. They're there to get Frank.
Right, exactly. Which as a result saves the day. But so I think this movie, again, I very much enjoyed the movie overall. Thought it was a very fun, creepy movie. I didn't find it super scary, but I definitely would have as a young kid. Like if I'd seen this younger than probably like 15, I would have found it very scary. But I overall really liked it. I think you fix this movie very, very simply. You have the movie end on Frank, them killing Frank, taking Frank away. Jesus wept, and Kirsty gets out of the house. Even have the house collapse or whatever if you want as they take Frank away. She gets out at the last second and sits with Steve on the front or whatever. And we just don't know what happened to the Le Marchand configuration. It just disappears or whatever, and the movie just ends there. That solves the three biggest problems with the movie, in my opinion. The first one is what you said. The Cenobites' betrayal doesn't, and like being the villain at the end is dumb.
No, I mean, you said chaotic neutral. They're more like lawful neutral.
Yes, sorry,
honestly.
Yes, lawful neutral. And yeah, you're absolutely right. So get rid of the ending. That fixes that. Second, it fixes one of the other biggest. That's, I think, arguably the biggest problem with the movie because it's an actual like thematic story problem with the movie. That's like narrative problem. So it fixes that. Two, you then don't have any of the terrible special effects at the end, which are like one of the other bigger parts of the issues with the movie. All of the practical effects are amazing and gross and awesome. The visual effects they did at the very, very end are crappy and bad. Goofy. And so you get rid of all of that, all of the showdowns with all the Cenobites and the engineer. So you don't have any of those special effects. So you fix both of those two problems. And then the third problem, you have like an extra 10 minutes that you need to fill, because the movie's only 90 minutes as is, roughly. But take that 10 minutes that you shaved off at the end add it to the first act and flesh out a little bit more of the setup at the beginning with Frank and what's going on with him, just a little bit there. But more importantly, the other thing I think the movie really needed a little bit more of was some of the relationship dynamics between Kirsty and Julie and
Yes.
Kirsty and her dad.
Yes.
And just a little bit more of that in the beginning, just to kind of set everything up a little bit more.
Yeah.
For the resolution at the end. You know what I mean?
I totally agree. And especially in regards to like Kirsty and Julia, because I know we can kind of fill in with tropes like, oh, stepmom, they don't get along.
Yeah.
Sure.
Absolutely.
And that works fine.
Yes.
But it's not interesting.
No.
And it doesn't tell us anything about these characters.
Yes. There's just, that was my biggest other complaint, was that if we had just like 10 minutes more of some character work in the first act, I think the movie would be way stronger as a whole. And then when I was thinking about, because I thought that before we ever got to the end of the movie, I was like, man, it would really help. Like when we were like getting towards the third act, I was like, I'm really enjoying this, but I wish I had just knew a little bit more about these characters and like their dynamics and stuff. Because I think it would just really make... And then, once we got to the end and wrapped this all up, I'm like, well, I know the place to get that time you need. Just chop off the end. And it fixes everything. It gets rid of all the dumb stuff at the end that doesn't need to be there. And it gives you more time at the beginning to really flesh out and make... Yeah. And that, I think, would have been... that very small change. It's not, I guess, a small change necessarily, but that relatively simple change, I think, would have vastly... I say vastly. That's not fair, because I think it's already a good movie. It would have minorly improved the overall narrative and everything that was going on. Pretty simply. And then they wouldn't have to spend 48 hours getting drunk and doing terrible special effects. Because anyways, that's gonna do it. Katie, what's next?
Up next, I really wanted to do something easy, so we are going to be talking about 1998's Quest for Camelot.
I have no idea what that is.
An animated movie from my youth that I never saw.
I've never even heard of it, I don't think.
And it is based on a book called The King's Demoiselle, or maybe it's just Damsel. It's spelled in a way that I've never seen, but that's by Vera Chapman. Supposedly, the movie is loosely based on this book, which is very exciting.
I have never heard of... Carrie Elwes is in the movie.
Yeah.
The only person... Oh, no. Gary Oldman.
Yeah.
Eric Idle.
Yeah.
Don Rickles, Jane Seymour, Celine Dion.
Yeah.
How have I never heard of this?
So
Pierce Brosnan?
I don't know why I never saw this movie, because this would have been like right up my alley in 1998.
Al Roker. Sorry. Yeah.
But the only reason that I like remembered it in the deep recesses of my brain is that we used to go to Burger King a lot, and I remembered that they had like toys for it.
I'm wondering
back in the day.
I'm like legitimately wondering if this is going to be a brainwave movie for me, if I'm going to be like, oh shit, I've seen this movie. Because
I'm positive I've never seen it, but maybe you have.
The name doesn't sound familiar and none of that, but when you said, I went to Burger King quite a bit as a kid too, because we always went to Burger King instead of McDonald's.
Yeah, we were Burger King people for some reason.
I know why I was a Burger King. We were a Burger King family. It's because McDonald's always fucked up my order, and as a kid, so I was a plain cheeseburger kid.
No pickles, no onions.
No pickles, no onions, no ketchup, no cheese, meat, bun. That's all I wanted as a kid on my cheeseburgers. And McDonald's would fuck that up all the time. And I would get onions and pickles on it or whatever. And I would be like, what are you doing? BK, have it your way. They always got it right. And so we always went to Burger King. That's my memory of it, at least. I don't know if that's actually why. Maybe my parents just preferred Burger King. I have no idea. They probably have a totally different reason. That was just my reason why I was glad to go to...
We should ask your parents.
To go to Burger King. They probably wouldn't even remember. They'd be like, I don't know. We went to both of them is probably what they'd say. I don't know. But, yeah. And so... But I feel like I might have a vague memory of these toys. Because I had tons of Burger King... whatever the... BK meal or whatever it was called.
I think it was just called a kids meal.
Kids meal toys or whatever. I had quite a few Burger King kids meal toys, and I'm wondering, like when I Googled it, it didn't just the poster didn't like, like spark any memories. The dragon looks vaguely familiar. That's on the front, the like 2-headed dragon thing. I am so interested to see but nothing else really looks super familiar. But anyways, so yeah, that'll be fun. That's our next episode in 2 weeks' time. In 1 week's time, we'll be previewing Quest for Camelot and going over all of your listener feedback for Hellraiser. Until that time, have a very safe and happy Halloween. That's coming up this weekend. Enjoy yourselves. Have a good time. And until next week, when we're talking about Hellraiser and Quest for Camelot, guys, gals, non-binary pals, and everybody else,
Keep reading books
keep watching movies,
and keep being awesome.